We continue now at the top of Daf Samach Bezam and Aleph in Meseches Gittin. This is Gittin Daf 62a. The Gemara is discussing whether there's a concern that an Amoritz is going to switch the food, and the Gemara is in the middle of bringing a Tosefta, the opinion of Rav Shimon ben Elazar, that the wife of a Chaver should not grind together with the wife of an Amoritz because there's a concern that no senes lavo chelas, that the wife of the Amoritz is going to give her from the food and she will eat. And Rashi here explains, no senes la alma chashuda eishes Amoritz lignov mishal balo. You see from this Tosefta that the wife of the Amoritz is suspect of stealing from her husband, v'litein lechaveret, in order to give it to her friend. And the Gemara therefore says, hashta mignav gonva, now we're saying that there's a suspicion of stealing, chilufei lo michlafa, do you not think there's a suspicion that she will switch things? And to that the Gemara answers again along the same lines that the Gemara answered on the previous Amud. Amar Rav Yosef says, Hasam Nami there also, Moria v'Amra, she rationalizes and she says as follows, Torah midishay achal, that the ox should eat from its threshing, meaning to say that this woman, this wife of the Chaver, is working together with me, so she's entitled from the food, just from some of the food, just like the animals are entitled to eat while they're working in the fields. Rashi says, Moria mora hora heter liatzma. Again, she rationalizes a kind of heter for herself. The point of all these answers is to say is that in all these situations, they're not switching or stealing the food for bad reasons. They're doing it ultimately for good reasons. And in those situations, it's a different kind of situation. There we do have a suspicion, but in general, we don't suspect an Amma Oretz to switch food for with bad intentions. And the Gemara continues with the Tosefta. Hey, Rabbi Yossi ben HaMeshulam Mishum Rabbi Yochanan Achiv. Rabbi Yossi ben HaMeshulam testified in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, his brother. She'amar Mishum Rabbi Elazar ben Chasma, said in the name of Rabbi Elazar ben Chasma, Einosin chalas am ha'oretz b'tahara. We don't make the chal of an am ha'oretz in purity. Aval osin isas chul of b'tahara, but we do make his dough in purity. V'notel heimena kadei chala. Then he takes the amount. That's the amount of chala. Umanicha b'kfiso banchus, and he puts it in a basket or a vessel. Uchashaba am ha'oretz litol notel eshtehen ve'eno choshesh. When the am ha'oretz comes to take, he takes them both, and there's no concern that he's going to be metame the chala. We'll see Rashi in a moment who will explain. The Tosefta continues, ve'en osin trumas zeisa b'tahara. Similarly, you can't press his olives to make olive oil, the truma of his olives b'tahara in purity. Aval osin zeisa mechula b'tahara, but he could take all of his olives, meaning the olives that are chulin, the olives that are not truma, and he can press those b'tahara, v'notel heimena kadei truma, and then take from that the amount of truma, u'meinicha b'kelev shel chaver, and put it into the vessels of the chaver, u'chesheba amaretz litol, and when the amaretz comes to take, again, notel eshtein, he could take them both, ve'eno choshesh, and there's no concern that he's going to be metame. And Rashi says, hey, Rav Yossi Braisi, again, this is a Braisa, Einosin chalas amaretz b'tahara, meaning, amaretz she'amar legabel chaver. Let's say an amaretz says to a chaver who needs the dough, he says, hafresh chala meisasi, here's my dough, separate some chala, v'aseyos b'tahara, I want you to make that chala and make sure that it stays pure. In other words, the amaretz is employing the chaver who is a gabel, the chaver who needs the dough, he's employing him to specifically separate chala and keep it pure. So in that case, the Tosefta is saying, lo yishmalo, the chaver should not listen to the amaretz. Sharei kvar nitma kol ha'isa b'yad amaretz. The point is, at this point in time, the dough is already tummy in the hands of the amaretz. It's too late. V'hakohen yismach ala gavel. Now a kohen's going to see what's happening. He'll rely on the kneader, shu chaver, because he's a chaver. V'yei saver shachala torah. He'll think the chala is tahora, when really it's not tahora. It's really already been tummy in the hands of the amaretz. Avolosin techila so isa b'tahara. However, he could employ him to make the dough from the beginning in purity. Bekviso banchusa, and then he places it in the basket or vessel. Kalim shal baloi chamosas vein regilim liten bamisa v'tumein mekablan. The point over here is these are all vessels which you generally don't put in dough, and they're not mekabel tuma, and that's a way of keeping them pure. And the point is, veino choshesh hagabel shemiyiga amaretz b'chala. The gabel does not need to be concerned that the amaretz will touch the chala v'yitzmen and make it tameh. Ulekamei mefarish taima. The Gemara will explain later why we're being so lenient and we don't have this concern. And then similarly by olives, when you're pressing the olives into olive oil, ve'enosin trumas zeisa betara, you can't take the truma of the olives and make them in purity, meaning la'achar shahafach zeisim l'sitein lebeis habad, after he's already prepared the olives to put them into the press. Ein mafrishim badodim chaverim truma mehen. At that point, it's already again too late. You can't have the pressers who are chaverim go and separate truma la'asos and betara and make it pure. Lefi shekvar hochsharu b'matan v'nitma. They've already been prepared and they're already tamei. V'hakohen somech aleim v'sover shein tahorim. The Kohen's going to rely on them and think they're tar, but they're really not. But again, if you do it from the beginning stages, at that point in time it wasn't yet tamei, then it's not going to be a problem. That's essentially what the Tosefta says. And so the Gemara continues, V'taimamai. Now, what is the reason for this? Meaning, why is it that the Tosefta is lenient in general and says we don't have to be concerned that the Amoritz is going to be Metame if, again, the Chaver begins the processing from the beginning? Amar Rav Yochanan, so Rav Yochanan says, Mishum kedei chayev de gabel, or Mishum kedei chayev de badad. This is just a leniency because this is the job of the gabel, this is the job of the badad, this is how they make money. So in order for them to sustain themselves for the life of the gabel and for the life of the badad, that's why we allow it. And the Gemara explains further, Tzricha, we need both cases, even though they seem to be identical. Diyashvin and gabel mishum de lo nafesh igre, because if we only have the case of the gabel, a gabel doesn't get paid so much. Aval badad, but when it comes to the badad, the person who presses the olives, the nafesh igre, he makes a lot more wages. A malo, so I would say no, maybe we won't be so lenient by the badad. V'yashmin on badad mishum de lo shchiach lein. If you're going to teach us by the badad, that's a kind of a job that doesn't happen so often. As Rashi will say, it happens just from year to year. Aval gabel de shchiach lein, but by a gabel he has business all the time. A malo, I might say we're not so lenient. Tzricha, so that's why both cases are needed to tell us that in both situations we're going to be lenient. Rashi explains, V'taimamai sharu rabbanan lakule b'truma ki haikula digla mechash dil mahadr naga. Why are the rabbanan so lenient here by truma? Because really there should be a concern that maybe he's going to touch the truma and make it tameh. And again, the Gemara said, "Lo nafesh igre." He doesn't make a lot in terms of wages. That's talking about the gabel. Shescharu he has little wages. Lafika chuani v'tzarach lemazonos. That's why he's poor and he needs mezonos. He needs sustenance. The lo shchiach. And then again, when it comes to the badad, it's not common. Listaker ki mishana l'shana. He only has business like this from year to year. Lachit tzarach lemazonos. That's why he needs this mezonos. So again, maybe over there, that's why we are more lenient. And so then the Gemara said, that's why we have both cases. In both cases, we're actually lenient. And the Gemara continues, Amar Mar, the master said, we said above in the Brisa, Notal Hemena, Kedei Chala Minicha Bechviso Banchusa. He takes the amount of challah and he puts that challah in a basket or in another kind of vessel that doesn't become tameh. Ucheshaba Amar, it's Lito, Notal Eshtein. When the Amarz comes to take, he takes them both. V'yeno Choshesh, we don't have to be concerned that he's going to be metameh the challah. And the Gemara says, V'leichosh Dilma Nagaba. So why aren't we concerned? Maybe we should be concerned that he's going to touch it. And the Gemara answers to that, no, we're not concerned because we say to him, but if you touch it, hadra lativla, then it turns into tevel again. Then that which we separated is not going to be considered challah. And that already, when he hears that, he'll be concerned, he won't touch it. But the Gemara says, but why not be concerned? Maybe he won't care about such a warning. And to that the Gemara says, and here in this case, he's hiring the chaver because he's trying to do things the proper way. You think he's not going to care that if we tell him that if he touches it, everything is going to be bad? Of course he's going to care in this situation. It's obvious because he's hiring the chaver in the first place. And the Gemara continues, Amar Mar, the master said, again, we said above in the Brisa, it says this is talking about by the olives that are being pressed into olive oil, you take the amount that is truma and he puts it in the vessels of the chaver. When the Amarz comes to take, he can take them both. We're not concerned he's going to be mitami the truma. And again the Gemara asks, but why aren't we concerned he might touch it? And the Gemara says, I understand in the first case of challah, there's a way of recognizing he'll remember because you put him in special vessels. Those special vessels will remind the Amarz not to be mitame. But here you're just putting it in the vessels of the chaver. What hecker is there? How is he going to remember not to touch it? And the Gemara answers to that, no, you do put it in special vessels. He places it in vessels made of dung or stone or earth, and that those are vessels again. They're not mekabel tuma, and that will remind the Amoretz. But the Gemara says, if so, ma'ir the chaver. Why does it say in the vessels of the chaver? Afilu da Amoretz nami. Even if it was the vessels of the Amoretz, it's the same idea. These are not mekabel tuma, and he'll remember. And the Gemara says, that's exactly what we were really saying. We mean put it in the vessels of an Amoretz, which are fit to be used by a chaver, meaning the kinds of vessels, the kinds of kelim that are not mekabel tuma. And Rashi explains the Amrinan Leila Ayim Olav. Again, the reason why he's not going to touch it is because we tell him in order to scare him, we say him Nagatabo to Tamena. If you touch it and make it Tameh, Hadra Lativla, it's going to become Tevel again. Voina Chashad Lechol Tevel Shabemisa. We don't suspect that an Amoretz is going to eat Tevel because Tevel, there's a Chi of Misa, and that already will scare him. He won't be Matame. And again, Why does he care? Because he's already trying to do things properly. He's hiring the chaver just in order to do it properly. Do you not think he won't care? Do you think he won't care about such a warning? Of course he will. And the Gemara said, I understand over there by chala iko hekera, there's something that he'll remember. You put the chala over there in vessels which you normally don't place dough. He'll remember they scared him. Now he sees these kalim. There's no issue. But maya kera islay delidkar. But in the case of the olive oil, what are you doing in order to allow him to remember? And again, the Gemara answered, b'chlei glolim, you put it into these klei glolim, meaning these various kinds of vessels that are not mekabel tumah, she'ein mekabel tumah, that are not mekabel tumah, dinaga b'kli lo mekabel tumah, when if he touches the kli, it's not going to be mekabel tumah, v'isa gufa islay akera misham hani kelim. And again, by the isor, if you're talking about the olive oil, by the dough or the olive oil, there's going to be a way of remembering because of these kelim, she'enu ragil, l'shtamish ben, that he doesn't use, v'amoritz lo achmor rabban aleh kulihai, l'shavia kezav gomer l'tamei b'masa. Now the rabbanon are not so strict by an amoritz that we consider him by a zav, that just by carrying it, he makes a tameh, and that's why we're able to be lenient in this situation. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, "Machzikin yedei ovdei kochav ma'azolos b'shvius." We're allowed to support the idol worshippers, the non-Jews, meaning we can work together with them during the Shemitah year when they're working their field. And the Gemara asks, "Machzikin, are you really allowed to work together with them during the Shemitah year? You can work that field together with the non-Jews." V'amar Rav Dimi bar Shishna mishmei derab, but didn't Rav Dimi bar Shishna say in the name of Rav, "Ein odrin ma'akom b'shvius"? We're not allowed to hoe the field together with the non-Jews during the Shemitah year. And furthermore, v'ein koflin shalom lo'ovid kochavim. You're not allowed to say shalom shalom, meaning saying the word shalom twice. You can't double shalom when you're talking to the ovid kochavim, to the idol worshipper. And the Gemara answers, lo, no, tzricha, it's needed for the following. L'meimra l'hu achzuku bi'alma. What the Mishnah means is, it doesn't mean you're actually working the field together with a non-Jew. What it means is you're saying, be strong, you're giving them encouragement that you're allowed to do during the Shemitah year. Ki hada Rav Yehuda amar lu achzuku, just like what Rav Yehuda, he would say achzuku, meaning he would say, be strong. Rav Sheshis amar lu ashartin. Rav Sheshis would say to them, job well done. That's what the Mishnah means to say. The Mishnah does not mean to say that you're actually working the field. And the Gemara continues at the two dots, vein koflin shalom lovid kochavim. We said above that you can't double shalom to the ovid kochavim. Rav Chisda maktim v'yoivlu shalom. Rav Chisda, he would say shalom to them first, and that would be a way of not saying it twice, not saying it double. And Rav Kahana amar le shalom alamar. Rav Kahana would say shalom alamar. He would respond to them, meaning they would say shalom to him, and he would respond, but he wouldn't say shalom twice. Instead, he would say shalom lamar, shalom to the master. And Rashi says, Odrin, which is chofrin, digging or hoeing in the field, v'yein koflin, you can't double shalom, meaning the hadin knows them shalom lovid kochav, and the fact that you're allowed to say shalom to a non-Jew, and they darche shalom, that's just to promote the peace with the shari, that's why it's permitted. Umisham darche shalom, v'chadazim nasagi, for darche shalom, one time is enough. Then the Gemara said, "L'meimr luhu achzuku," to say achzuku, k'she'ormen lo say malacha over maleim techazkenu yedechem. You should be strong while you're working. Asharta afulash and chizuk. Asharta also, it's a way of giving them chizuk, saying job well done. Shalom alamar. So he would say shalom alamar. Now Rashi understands this to mean v'lo miskavin levarcho, meaning he didn't have intention to bless him. Ela libo hayel. He was really thinking of Mar. He was thinking of his Rebbe. He was thinking of his master. So even though he said it, he wasn't really intending it for the non-Jew. Tosas offer a slightly different explanation. Shalom alamar perish b'kuntras. Rashi explains, he wasn't trying to give him a blessing. He had in mind for his Rebbe. But Tosas says it's tzarachian, that explanation. That's an issue of genevas das. You're saying one thing but having in mind another. There's no reason to give that explanation. The whole point over here is you can't say twice the word shalom, and so these are various ways of avoiding having to say the word shalom twice. And apparently the idea is that when a person would respond shalom to a non-Jew, or in general when a person responds with shalom, they usually say the word shalom twice. Rav Kahana avoided it by saying shalom alamar, and Rav Chisda avoided it by not responding to the non-Jew. Instead, Rav Chisda was the first one to say shalom, then you only say the word shalom once. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, V'shalom Mishlom, when you're allowed to greet the non-Jews. And the Gemara says, Hashta Achzukim Mechaskina. Now, if we said that you're allowed to give them chizuk, you're allowed to tell them that they've done a good job, Shalom B'shlom and Miboy, do we even need to say that you can extend greetings to them? Of course you're allowed to extend greetings to the non-Jews. It seems obvious. And the Gemara says, Amar Rav Yeva says, Lo Nitzruch El Yom Edom. We're talking about on their holiday. The Tanya, as we learned in a brayso, lo yikones adam lebeiso shalovet kochavim biyomedam v'yitin lo shalom. A person shouldn't enter the house of the idol worshiper on the day of his holiday and give him greetings. Mitzo b'shuk, and if you find the idol worshiper in the marketplace, nosen lo b'safa rafu v'koved rosh, you could greet him, you could extend greetings, but you should do it in a low voice, and you should do it in a manner that's solemn. And Rashi explains, if we just said that you're allowed to give them strength and encouragement with something that's really awesome, meaning working the field during the Shemitah year, is it even a question about extending them greetings throughout the year? Of course that's allowed. And the Gemara then answered, we're talking about Liyomedam on their holiday. We're not concerned that maybe the non-Jew, now that you've greeted him on his holiday, he's going to go and give thanks to his idol. That might be a problem. No, that's not a concern. And Lo Yikanes, then it said you can't go into his house to extend him greetings. Because if you've went into his house and extended him greetings, you've already considered him so important. Again, Dil Ma'azalu Modi, maybe he will go and he'll give thanks to his idol. And the Gemara continues, Rav Huna v'Rav Chisda have a Yosvi. Rav Huna and Rav Chisda were sitting, Chalev Vazel Geniva, and Geniva came by them. Amar lechad lechavre, so one said to his friend, Neko Mekame, we should stand up for Geniva. The Bar Uryanu, because he's somebody who's a Ben Torah, he knows Torah. Amar lo, so he said to him, Mekame Palga Nekom, should we stand up from someone in front of someone who's argumentative? Rashi says, Bar Uryan Ben Torah, again he's a Ben Torah, Palga Cholek ala Chachamim. He was somebody who argued with the Chachamim. Shaya Mitzar l'Marukva, Shaya Av Bezin Kedaminim Parakama, like we said in the first parak, he was Mitzar, he caused pain to Marukva, and so should we really stand up for such a person? Adachi, in the meantime, Asaiyu Lagabayo, he came by to them. Amar Lu, he said to them, Shalom Aleichu Malki, Shalom Aleichu Malki. He said, peace unto you kings, peace unto you kings. He doubled the language of Shalom and he called them Malachim. Amrulay, they said to him, Minolach the Rabbanan Ikru Malachim. From where do you know that the Rabbanan are referred to as Malachim, as kings? Amar Lu, he said to them, D'chsiv, as it's written in the pasuk, Bi Malachim Yimlochu v'Gomer. It uses this language of Melech. And the Gemara continues, Amrulay, they said to him, Menolach de Kaflinon Shalom Alamalchi. From where do you know that you say a language of Shalom twice? You double that language when you're talking to kings. And so the Gemara says, Amar Lui said to them, the Amar of Yehuda Amar Rav, because Rav Yehuda said that Rav says, Minayin Shekoflin Shalom Lamelech. From where do we know that we double the language of Shalom when speaking to a king? Shenemar, as the pasuk says, V'ruach Lovsha Es Amosai Rosh HaSholishim V'Gomer. And if you look at the pasuk as it goes on, the pasuk goes on to say, V'yimcha ben Yishai Shalom Shalom Lecha V'Shalom Lo Zrecha. There's a doubling of the language of Shalom in that pasuk. That's how you see that when it comes to a king, you double the language of Shalom. And the Gemara continues, Amri Lei, so they said to him, Lito Mar Midi, let the master eat something. Amar Lahu, so then he said to them, Hachi Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav, so said Rav Yehuda that Rav said, Asr lo la'adam shi'itom klum ha'chitin ma'achol lebehemto. It's forbidden for a person to eat anything until he gives food to his animal. Shenemar, as the pasuk says, V'nasati esev v'sodcha lefemtecha v'hadar v'yachalta v'savata. First it talks about the food that's given to the animal, then it talks about the food that's given to the people. So you see again, the person needs to feed his animal first, and only then can he eat. Hadron Allah Chanizakin, we will return to you, Parak Chanizakin. This is the end of the 5th parak of Meseches Gitin. If you're enjoying these videos and this channel, please like, share, and subscribe. And please take a look at the description box below to see how you can support this channel. And we will continue with the 6th parak of Meseches Gitin in the next video on Daf Samech Beis Amud Beis.